May all beings be happy and secure. May all beings have happy minds, whatever living beings there may be, without exception, weak or strong, long, large, medium, short, subtle or gross, visible or invisible, living near or far, born or coming to birth. May all beings have happy minds. Let no one deceive another, nor despise anyone anywhere, neither from anger nor ill will should anyone wish harm to another. As a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child, even so towards all living beings, one should cultivate a boundless heart. One should cultivate for all the world a heart of boundless loving friendliness, above, below and all around, unobstructed, without hate or resentment, whether standing, walking, sitting, lying down or whenever awake. One should develop this mindfulness. This is called divinely dwelling here, not falling into erroneous views, but virtuous and endowed with vision, removing desire for sensual pleasures. One comes never again to birth in the womb. Okay. With this, we start our practice. At this time, as usual, pay total mindful attention to your breathing and notice breath arising and passing, appearing and disappearing. You can notice the breath only through the feelings. That feeling also rises and falls, appears and disappears. Even the feeling can be noticed through your perception. Mentally you perceive the feeling and the breath that also appears and disappears. You have an intention, that is your thought, that too rises and falls. Then your consciousness, along with all this, arises and passes away. Every moment you breathe in and out, this very natural phenomena take place. At that time, when you notice this without any verbalizing, conceptualizing, your body, feeling, perception, thought and consciousness all become calm. Your breath becomes calm, mind becomes calm and relaxed. At that state, no desire, no greed, no clinging can arise, because what you experience is very, very peaceful. Greed or desire can agitate the mind. When the mind and body are so calm and peaceful, at that state, anger or resentment, rigidity does not arise. Instead, you feel the feeling of metta that you recited verbally at the beginning. That verbalizing metta, now you feel everything, everybody is your friend. You feel that way. Because there is no anger in your mind, no greed in your mind. Only metta feeling is there. That moment, again the mind and body become even more calm and more peaceful. And that is another wonderful on the one hand, wonderful experience. On the other, that also may lead to sleepiness and drowsiness. This also very natural and logical, practical experience. And therefore we have to overcome sleepiness and drowsiness by arousing energy. I recommend people to take deep breath and hold it as long as they can and slowly breathe out. Again do the same thing. When you do this very simple exercise, sleepiness disappears, you will be very energetic. You will be awake. And keep practicing again and again. But when you arouse your energy, sometimes it can be an excessive energy. Therefore the mind can vacillate between the past and the future. Mind can go to the past and to the future. In fact, the mind does not leave your body. What happens is you remember many things that you have done in the past. Some are correctly, some are incorrectly, some traumatic experience and very unforgettable experience. It doesn't matter what, those experiences are registered in your mind, put in your memory bank, and they become active when you try to gain concentration. Therefore you may remember many, countless things that you have seen, heard, smelled, tasted, and touched. They can come or they become active or come into the surface from the memory bank, and then you keep being unmindful, and they will take you away from your practice. These are called papancha in Pali, papancha. They drag you to various experiences of the past. Or mind goes to the future. Imagination, fantasizing, daydreaming, thinking of planning of the future. That also is happening right in your mind. Just as you don't go to the past, nor can you go to the future. All happen in the mind. So we have to focus our attention on this experience and try to keep the mind in the present moment. Present moment is not empty moment, but full of activities. One of them is your breath. You are breathing in and out this moment in the present moment. When the breath is moving in and out in the present moment, that's a very good subject to pay attention, to keep the mind anchored on this movement in and out, in and out, in and out of breath. Then that restless mind or wandering mind will stop and stays in the present experience, present moment. And that is what sometimes we call moment by moment mindfulness. Every moment the body, feeling, perception, thought and consciousness rise and fall very quickly. Become aware of that. And then still you have some doubt about your practice, about your achievement. You might wonder whether or not you can gain some benefit from this practice or attain liberation. Surely, friends, we can attain liberation in this very life. This is not something that we must do after our death. We can attain this in this very life. That is why the Buddha attained Siddhartha Gautama Bodhisattva. That is how he attained. In that very life, he kept practicing, seeing this rising and falling, rising and falling. That opened his wisdom eye to overcome the notion of greed, to overcome greed, hatred and delusion, and the notion of permanent eternal self. By seeing, as the Buddha said in discourses, Jnanang pasang bhikkhave asavanang kayang vadami. Bhikkhus, I tell only those who sees and knows, those who see and know can overcome their fermentation, asava, taints, they can overcome. Not those who do not see or do not know. So Buddha saw and knew. That's why he was able to overcome all his fermentation. With that experience is recorded in the first sermon itself. From that moment he kept on telling people to do the same thing. And his Dhamma is the Buddha's own teacher. He did not have outside teachers, but this Dhamma was his teacher. By following Dhamma, he attained liberation. And that Dhamma still is as powerful as it was then. Following that, many of his disciples attained liberation. And since they have attained liberation following the Dhamma that Buddha taught, we too can attain that state in this very life. You are not an exception. We all can attain that state. That gives us confidence. That means we have to trust the Buddha, Dhamma, Sanja. And then we also have to trust ourselves. We have been able to overcome our greed, resentment, sleepiness and drowsiness, restlessness and worry. Having overcome these 4 hindrances, we build up our own confidence that we can destroy the remaining hindrance called doubt. When we overcome these hindrances, as Buddha mentioned very clearly in several discourses, we feel we are full of joy. That joy leads to happiness. The happy mind attains concentration, gains concentration. So we gain that kind of concentration, use that concentration to look back at our aggregates again. Body, feeling, perception, thought and consciousness. And now we can see the subtlest changes, most subtle changes, which earlier we did not see clearly. That is very, very true. For instance, suppose you read something and after sometimes you reread it. When you read the second time, you become your material becomes clearer to you. Read the third time, again clearer. Similarly, when we, with concentrated state of mind, look back your aggregates, you can see them changing in a very subtle way. Then greed, hatred and delusion will fade away. I think with this is a summary of the practice. In your long meditation practice, you can expand this and get more clear results. Now let us begin our quiet practice and see how this happens to us. By means of these meritorious deeds, may I never join with the foolish, may I join always with the wise, until the time I attain Nibbana. May the suffering be free from suffering, may the fear-struck be free from fear, may the grieving be free from grief, so too may all beings be. From the highest realm of existence to the lowest, may all beings arisen in these realms, with form and without form, with perception and without perception, be released from all suffering and attain to perfect peace. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Friends, now I want to continue this talk on right understanding. I have given talks on right understanding discourse that Venerable Sariputta delivered, and you can see it in Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 9, where he explained right understanding in 16 ways, and I explain each of them in my talk, and sometimes I give more than one talk on each of Venerable Sariputta's explanation. Now we are on contact. I gave 3 talks on contact already. This is I think 2 talks. This is the 3rd talk I think I give on contact. So, it is not the sensual pleasures, the pretty things in the world outside ourselves. A person's sensual pleasure is lustful intention. The pretty things remain just as they are in the world, but the wise remove the desire for them. This is what the Buddha said in Nibvedika Pariyaya Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya. I want to elaborate this in relation to contact. Sensual pleasure is called kama. Buddha says should be understood as it is. What is kama? That is 5 objects of our 5 senses, like forms, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Form or sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. And they are there, but how they become, how they arise. That is how we have to understand how they arise. The sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, or tangible, not touch, tangible, or tactile objects. When the senses, and say for instance eye, come in, eye and the sight are present, consciousness arises, and then when these three together is called contact, and therefore it is called eye contact. We normally talk about eye contact, but we don't know the mechanism of eye contact. It happens so quickly that we think the object outside over there arouse my desire. The object outside arouses my desire, my pleasure. So we think that object outside can arouse my pleasure. Therefore, if I is removed from those object, or object is removed from the eye, then this desire does not arise in my mind. But however, object itself is not to be blamed. Object is not to be accused. I also is not to be blamed. I is not to be accused. Then what happened? Consciousness arises, and consciousness alone cannot be responsible for this. But when these three combine together, all this must happen. This is the way how things arise dependently. I has to be in good shape, that means healthy, that eye has the visible part in the eye, the shining part through which an object enters the optic nerves and then goes to the brain and then converts it into something. And depending on all this, if we have previously recorded certain concept, according to that concept, or when all these come together, we call it a contact. And that contact arouses our desire, as it is recorded in the previous experiences, not previous life, but previous experiences in this life. It's a very quick and subtle, complicated way, complicated what you call process. That is how contact arises. As soon as that contact arises, then according to our previous training, desire arises, kama arises. So the object itself doesn't do all this. But when all these come together, we have desire, contact. Then sound, the same way, sound, there may be all kinds of sounds. If we don't pay attention to them, and if the ear, hearing faculty, attention, consciousness, all don't come together, there is no contact. When all these are combined, at least the hearing, clarity of hearing, there may be, real biological terms in the ear, When it is in good health, it is not damaged, and the object or sound is there outside, or even our own sounds. And then consciousness, as soon as this sound and the ear come together, in that very moment consciousness arises. And this coming together is what we call activities, or sankhara in Pali, sankhara. Sankhara means just activities, not something static, activities. When these come together, activities begin. At that moment consciousness arises, and that moment contact arises. And according to our previous recording, in our mind, desire arises. From that, what we call Sanja Perception. We recognize it and then immediately send our memory back to our previous experience to make it pleasing to us. I have heard this sound, and later on we want to hear that sound again and again and again, and because the inside in our brain it is already recorded. So the desire already is along with that sound. And all this happen through the contact. If we don't pay attention, let the sound be there, we don't pay any attention, then no contact is there. We are not conscious of it, because our consciousness, our attention is somewhere else. For instance, there are several sounds. We can pick only one of them at a time, and that is the one we got in touch with and we have contact with. If we don't pay attention to that thing and pay attention to something else, that is what we hear. And therefore contact is so delicate, it happens so quickly that we even don't know how it happens. But that is the mechanism, that how it happens. Buddha himself have experienced all these things and very clearly explained to us. And therefore, for origin of sound, origin of sight is contact, and origin of feeling, now we say kama is sensual pleasure, and Vedana means feeling, and feeling also arises from contact. Normally, this is what we have generally studied. From the feeling, from contact, feeling arises. Not only feeling arises from contact, even the desire arises from contact. That is what I want to emphasize. Not only feeling, but even the desire arises from contact. That also is very clear. First, any kind of feeling arises through the eyes, that is called chakku sampassaja vedana. Sampassa means contact, and sota sampassaja, feeling arises through the ear contact, feeling arises through nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, and even mind contact, mano sampassaja vedana. Contact arises. As soon as contact arises, as soon as that feeling arises from the contact, and after that we recognize it, Sanja Perception arises. Now you can see the whole series of things arise through the based on contact. And as already I mentioned, Sanja perception arises from contact. Then what we felt, we perceive it. What we felt, we perceive it. If there is no feeling which arises from contact, we don't perceive things. For instance, when we breathe, when the breath touches our areas, nostrils or tip of the nose or upper lips or somewhere, as soon as that breath touches, then the feeling arises. If the feeling doesn't arise, we don't perceive the breath. So the perception arises at the same time. All based on contact. Then one more thing arises, that is after perception, what you call arises, what is called asava. Asava is a good translation for asava is fermentation. Sometimes it is translated into English as taints, like in Sabbasava Sutta. But the better term is fermentation. Why it is called fermentation? Because we keep it brewing again and again and again in our mind. What do they brew? What do we brew? What do we ferment? Greed we ferment. It's called kamasava. Then we breed our re-becoming. It's the same thing repeating again and again in this very life. And they call bhavasava. We like to repeat it. Then avidya, so ignorance. We like to, we not intentionally, but since it is so powerful mental state, that keeps repeating again and again. It's called bhavasava. And that's repetition of these things so many trillions of times in our life make them very powerful. Therefore they are called asava. When you brew something, when you ferment something for a long time, it becomes very, very strong and powerful. And therefore they are called asava or fermentation. And that arises also from contact. The outside thing doesn't arouse our fermentation, but inside, outside things appear and disappear and they go. But we live with this, we live with what we have put inside our mind. And we keep repeating it again and again and again for instance, greed, kamasava. Once it arose in the mind, we cannot get rid of it immediately as we put in. Putting in is easier, but getting out of is difficult. And therefore it remains, when we cannot get it out of our mind, it keeps growing inside, proliferated, repeating itself. And then it becomes very, very powerful. And many times people ask, how can I get rid of such and such a desire for such and such a thing, such and such a person, such and such a shit. How can I get rid of it? Of course it is very difficult, because we have fermented it, brewed it, and reinforced it again and again and again, giving more and more reasons. We give more and more reasons and reinforce this greed. Therefore, all this happened because of our contact. Then Asava, in the ordinary level, we see asava as anusaya, as underlying tendency. Then when certain activity takes place, it arises, that is pariyuttana, and then if we don't take care of at that level, it can grow and become kammapatha. So kammapatha means the path of karma. We commit karma. Normally, from asa we don't commit wholesome karma. From fermentation, we don't commit wholesome karma. If we commit wholesome karma, then it also makes us linger in samsara, because wholesome karma naturally produce wholesome results. Wholesome results means results that we like, and therefore we want to commit more wholesome karma. So wholesome karma is not the way to end karma. Like unwholesome karma, from asava, avidya, for instance, kamasava, bhavasava, ditthasava, like this, all these asavas, patighasava, don't produce wholesome karma, they produce unwholesome karma. However, because of ignorance, we even commit wholesome karmas with asavas, perpetuate our existence, and therefore it becomes turned into sort of not never-ending source of samsaric existence. All happens because of contact. And then after contact, we have after karma, when we commit, when we have asava, we have karma, and then karma, friends, karma can never bring peace. The karma committed from this asava does not bring us peace, sukha, happiness, liberation, attaining nibbana, and so forth. We cannot do that. And therefore, karma always entails dukkha, suffering. This suffering is not physical aches and pains, not of, there are few examples that Buddha has given in Mahasatipatthana Sutta, not to get what one wants and getting what one does not want, and separation. These are somewhat one level, ordinary level of suffering. But the deepest level of suffering is called suffering of sankhara. Sankhara means either wholesome, unwholesome, or imperturbable. That is why Buddha says, sabbe sankhara dukkha. Sabbe sankhara dukkha. All sankharas are dukkha. Dukkha means suffering. No sankhara can bring peace and happiness. Now, suppose we commit wholesome sankhara, punya, wholesome punya. Punya means meritorious deeds. Meritorious, there are list of meritorious deeds we mentioned at the very beginning of this series of talks. So we commit them, abstain from demeritorious deeds, and commit wholesome meritorious deeds. And then these wholesome meritorious deeds brings us pleasure, ayu, vanna, sapa, bala, and some degree of wisdom, longevity, beauty, then ayu, vanna, sapa, pleasure, and strength, mental strength and finally wisdom. But wisdom does not arise from material things, material practicing punya. And wisdom arises from developing the mind through mindfulness. Therefore, the karma generates dukkha rather than liberation from samsara. And that the karma that brings dukkha start from contact through the six senses. We have six kinds of contacts, and every time we have contact, that contact normally because of our ignorance arouses our desire. If the moment we we have cleared our mind with real insight, mindfulness and concentration, then as soon as contact arises, we know that contact is impermanent and we finish it right there, even without going into the feeling level. And that is called what do you call our ayatana nirodha. Ayatana nirodha, cessation of faculties. The word ayatana is used: chakka ayatana, sota ayatana, ghana ayatana, jiva ayatana, kaya ayatana, mana ayatana. Ayatana means actually the word ayatana is a factory, or the place where all kind of activities are going on or taking place. That particular institute is called ayatana. So the eye, ear, nose and so forth are called ayatana because when through the eyes, not only seeing but we get information about the object and proliferate them in our mind, keep them adding more and more, people call adding value to them. And more value we add, the longer we want to have it. So all this happens through the eyes, ears and so forth. So cessation of desire that arises through the eye is called ayatana nirodha. Salayatana nirodha in Pali is called salayatana nirodha is nibbana. Salayatana nirodha is nibbana. Nirodha means cessation. When we have the contact right then and there, if we can, through the practice of mindfulness and clear insight and concentration, right then and there, if we can stop it, that moment we experience Nibbana, we attain Nibbana, we have Nibbanic bliss. This can happen momentarily, and this momentary bliss, if we can repeat, perpetuate, and become more mature in this experience, then we can have Nibbanic experience in this very life. I think, friends, this is how we use contact, and this is how contact plays such an important role in our life, especially in our meditation, in our development of our wisdom. This is not something that we can do very easily and simply without wisdom. It is the wisdom that opened the gate to liberation. I think with this I want to end today's talk, and I expect you to ask me questions tomorrow. I am sure this talk also stimulates your mind to frame your questions and ask me tomorrow. Okay, now let me end the talk. We want to wish all those who are in hospitals suffering not only from COVID-19 but any kind of disease, may they recover very quickly, return to normal life, practice Dhamma, and liberate themselves from samsara. And those doctors and nurses and hospital staff taking care of these people, may they continue their wonderful, compassionate service to help these people even at the risk of their own lives. May they continue their compassionate work and live long in good health, practice meditation, practice Dhamma, and attain liberation. And those who are generously supporting these various projects, may they continue their wonderful service for the benefit of the all, of everybody, and live long in good health and attain liberation from samsaric suffering. And everybody else who have joined us or not join us, especially who join us and participated in this Dhamma talk series. They are a great reinforcement to me. They encourage me to continue this service. Therefore, I want to wish all of you good health, long life, and practice Dhamma and liberate from samsaric suffering. And those who have lost their loved ones, I want to wish them to recover very quickly from their grief and have very peaceful, clear state of mind to practice Dhamma and liberate from samsaric suffering. All of you, all living beings will be peaceful and happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank
Sadhu.
you, Terwan
Thank you,
Sarnai.
Bhante.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu.
Atu sabba mangalang.
Thank you.